Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Today's webinar is a special webinar. It's presented by Sarajean Chung and it's about tips on how to work from home. Before we begin the webinar, there are some housekeeping items that we would like to go through. The webinar will be approximately 1 hour long. All attendees will be muted. Question and answer session will be during the last 15 minutes of the webinar. But as this one is a special webinar, we'll see how the mood is going. We might have some more minutes for the question and answer session. Attendees can ask questions in the GoToWebinar question box right away. Due to time constraints, not all questions will be answered. Webinar will be recorded. Recording will be shared on social media and will be sent via email to all registrants and attendees. Panelists are Fahim Nias, Mario Quiñones, myself, Joanna Brower, and Sarajean Chung. And even though this is a special webinar, we want to remind you that Clip Studio Paint is your all-in-one solution for stunning, ready-to-publish illustrations, comics, manga, and animations. Learn more at clipstudio.net/n and graphically.com. And with that, we'd like to pass the reins of the webinar over to Sarajean and her presentation about tips how to work from home. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Mario. Let me actually enable my camera so that you guys can see me. There you go. Hi, everyone. How are you? Let me actually just rearrange everything so I can see. But welcome, and thank you so much for being here. I am TheOneWithBear. Today is a really special webinar because we don't normally do a webinar where it's featuring the camera. We usually show our screen and then we talk about the software, we talk about the hardware. But since right now we feel like a lot of the demands are, people struggling to work from home and people struggling with anxiety due to the world crisis. So we wanted to kind of spend a little bit more time, a little bit more intimate time with the audience and see what we can do to help. And honestly, I am already completely off my script. Honestly, today I have been feeling quite nervous about how this presentation is going to go because I thought about a million ways of approaching it, since in the beginning I kind of wanted to say like maybe I dress up, maybe I put on my makeup, maybe I make myself presentable and do like a little TED talk and whatever. But then I kind of felt like this is a session where I wanted to be a little bit more honest. I feel like if you're here to look for the direct work from home tips and tricks, those can be easily found on YouTube. There are, if you would just Google work from home on YouTube, you will see like a huge list of really amazing videos from content creator all over the world. And everybody has amazing tips already. Those are things that you can easily watch in under 10 minutes. You don't have to spend an hour here to listen to me ramble. So I feel like even this particular webinar, we decided to move ahead with it because of a video that I made for Wacom. I made 5 tips to work from home for Wacom, and then Clip Studio Paint saw the video and wanted to do something a little bit more elaborate on the subject. However, from my personal perspective, I feel like all of the advice that I kind of wanted to give on the actual tips to work from home were already somewhat covered in the video, that if you guys want to watch it, it is less than 10 minutes long, I believe, and it's available on Wacom's page. So if you guys want, you can feel free to check it out. But like I said, I feel like since those tips are able to be covered in that type of video form in such a short amount of time, that today what I actually want to talk about is not only just small tips, but also how to react or how to cope with this crisis, or how I cope. Because honestly, I feel like everybody copes in such a different way. We're all fundamentally different, and the way that I deal with crisis is probably not going to apply to you. That being said, I feel like this is a good time for everybody to kind of share experiences, and therefore I would prefer today's content to be catered to you. Kind of more like also in some way getting to know my audience, getting to know who is listening to me. Um, and therefore, I wanted today's session to be more on Q&A. And if you have any question for me, anytime throughout the webinar, feel free to type it in the question box, and then I'll do my best to answer. But before we jump into all that, I know that was a very long intro, sorry, but I'll do a little bit of an introduction on myself. I know probably a lot of you guys come from my streaming community, or if you're not, so you're really used to see this background, you're used to seeing me in my pajama or the shirts that I sleep in. I'm not really the type that wakes up and then takes a shower, or I usually take showers at night, but I know a lot of people kind of do that as a morning routine. They shower in the morning, they get dressed, they put on their makeup, and then they go to work. But for me, I've worked from home for the past 10 years, not necessarily as a professional artist. For the huge chunk of my 10 hours, it was 10 hours, 10 years of working from home, I was originally just aiding my partners at the time to kind of help him out with his career, with his goals. But I was also working a second job outside. So a lot of retails, a lot of like bakery jobs, which I absolutely love. I love working at bakeries. But as a professional artist, I've been doing this for 4.5 years. And that kind of started somewhat as an accident. I started streaming. Let me backtrack a little bit. I went to school for illustration and art, illustration and design. My school was a very career focused. It was a very intense type of schooling system. It was 3 years. I got accepted right out of high school, so I was the youngest person in class. I grew up with animated manga, as you can see, like a bunch of manga over there. But I was always very into anime and manga. But when I went into school, our illustration section of the schooling focused heavily on like children's illustration, editorial illustrations, or basically things that I was not really accustomed to, and also heavily on design. So like logo design, website designs, packaging designs, and magazine spread, etc., etc. And throughout the school, because I was very young and inexperienced, and also didn't have a ton of, I didn't really know what I wanted. So when I was in school, anime or manga wasn't really taken seriously. And after I graduated, I just got so burnt out that I stopped doing art for 8 years. So that was a very long period of time where I wasn't doing any art. I was gaining experience from other types of jobs. Now, and then incidentally, my friend let me Wacom Intuos 3, which is like one of those older tablets, the non-display tablets, which I actually really love for painting. But that was my kind of my turning point getting back into art. I enjoyed painting again. I enjoy having fun, experimenting, and then I accidentally started streaming. So that was 4.5 years ago. And so today I'm here to share with you how I deal with working from home all these years. But before I get into that, I do want to talk a little bit about the core differences between what you may be looking for and what I have to offer. So I'm a huge introvert. I chose to work from home because that is my comfort zone. Like this is what fuels my creativity. But I believe if you were the same as me, you would not be in the audience because you already know how to work from home. Like you don't really need to seek help to structure your time. And therefore, I feel like the people who are in the audience right now, you may be here because you're struggling with the fact that you were forced to stay at home and you're trying to I saw a really good way of putting it on Twitter, actually. I think it said, you're not working from home. You're at home during a crisis trying to work. So that is a really huge difference in terms of the way that we may be approaching this. And the first thing I really want you guys to know is that I feel like part of this is setting a realistic expectations for yourself. If you've been struggling, know that it's absolutely okay. Know that you are doing really great. Because honestly, if you really think about it, March 11th was the day that it was announced that this is a pandemic. That's less than a month ago. At the beginning of this year, we were still planning all the conventions, we were still planning all the trips. My family was we were supposed to be in Mexico right now. So honestly, all this stuff hit within, I would say within 3 months, and that's less month than a usual probation at work. So if you're struggling, just know that this is absolutely okay. I mean, I have so many years of experience working from home and learning about my own traits, learning about how to cater my situation to myself. I have all these years of experience, and you have less than 1 month. You're doing great. And the fact that you are here means that you have accepted that you have to work from home. And that is also a huge step because, in my opinion, one way of moving on or adapting to a situation is to be honest with the situation itself, is to not deny changes. Because honestly, if you think of this pandemic as a zombie apocalypse, right? Like after a zombie apocalypse, can you imagine the world still be exactly the same as it was before? Like, not really, you know? And so that instead of hoping that everything would go back to the way it was before, you adapt to, okay, this is where I have to be now. Like, this is what I have to deal with. And once you have accepted that, accepted the inevitable, you can then constructively make changes to your life. And even if you haven't gotten to that point, even if you are still struggling and crying every day and just being afraid of uncertainty, even stuff like just participating in webinars like this or seeking help to work from home, that is a step in itself. So I really just, I don't want it to be too cheesy, but at the same time, I just want you to know that. And but obviously, I don't want today's session to be just my monologue and me being super encouraging. I do want to have structured, you know, so how do I describe it? Like, I want to have actual tips of how I personally have been handling all this, even though I have been working from home all this time. But this pandemic has actually put a huge strain on my mental state as well. I feel like a lot of creatives, maybe you're a creative, maybe you're here for general advice. I have no way of knowing, but many creatives are empath, and you may be feeling a huge chunk of anxiety coming from the fact that you don't know how to help. You don't know you don't know you don't know how to help the others, and therefore you kind of almost feel guilty of not being there for other people because you're struggling as well. And that normally would put a huge dent in our creative load. And you may be finding yourself being difficult with motivations. You may be just every day, like you don't know how to structure your life anymore. Even though you've possibly been working from home, or even though you always felt like you were an introvert anyway, like this should be fine. And then it turns out it isn't. But I have felt all of that emotion that I just described to you throughout this past month. And the one thing that has been helping me a lot, I promise it's not gonna go into like the huge game nerd kind of mode, but one thing that has been helping me a lot is actually Animal Crossing. You may have heard of it because it's all over Twitter, it's all over Instagram, it's all over everywhere, right? But for those who don't know, Animal Crossing is a new game released by Nintendo on the Nintendo Switch. And I spend a lot of time on trying to analyze why exactly this game has been helping me mentally, or has been helping so many people mentally. It's not just because it's super cute. It's it's not because it's like one of the cutest thing that you probably can witness in pixels, but there are a few things that the game has done right that I feel like you can actually incorporate into your structure working from home. And one of the most important things is how it provides you of small tasks, like every single day. So this game, why it's so different from the rest of the games is because it follows the world clock. Like it follows your local time. It's not a game where you can progress very, very quickly by it just kind of like speeding itself, like the more you play, the faster you can advance the story kind of thing. So in this particular game, because it forces you to stay within the 24 hours in real life, it has a very natural slow progression, a slow pace. And I feel like that in itself has been helping a lot of people kind of ease their anxiety, because it's so slow paced. And that is one thing that I want to kind of talk about when you're struggling with working from home. Like I said, you had less than 1 month to deal with this crisis, and maybe you're feeling anxious, maybe you're feeling depressed because you feel like you have to be productive right away. You feel like you have to, you see all of these people talking about how like how many projects they're working on, or they started picking up a new hobby, they're finishing a book, they're finishing a painting, etc., etc., and then you feel anxious and feel like you're not doing enough. But take it slow, take a deep breath, And just like in the game where you can only obtain a few items per day, and there's no way of knowing what items it's gonna be, understand that every single day that we have been in this pandemic has been a slow, gradual building of you perhaps finding yourself, perhaps finding out your own traits, perhaps slowly discovering a new hobby. It's not going to happen in a fast manner, right? Like it's going to take time, but right now, all we have is time, right? So, as long as you kind of settle yourself into that mindset of, okay, this is going to take time, this is going to be slow building, then perhaps you can turn that crisis into something a little bit more exciting for yourself. The second thing is the game has very small tasks for you to do, and then whenever you fulfill a task, it gives you like a little reward points that you can use to purchase fancy things. But obviously that doesn't really apply in real life. However, the concept of small tasks that you can cross off to feel a sense of satisfaction is actually very important. Right now, if you are dealing with things being very overwhelming, or the goals that you have is very overwhelming, try to break those goals into very small mundane things, such as, so for example, right now I'm working on a painting that I have trouble finishing. It's a really big painting, and instead of saying, okay, I'm going to finish this painting today, I'm going to break it down into, there are several heads in this painting. I'm going to finish painting 2 heads. I'm going to finish painting the patterns. I'm going to finish painting the fish. I'm going to finish painting the flower. And like, once you break those things into tiny little chunks, even though the list will look really long, but the satisfaction comes from you crossing those things off. Um, and because when you feel fulfilled, when you feel satisfied by crossing things off, you would gain a momentum. You will gain more motivation to do more. So it's like a small mental switch. It may sound really weird, or it may sound really mundane, but it actually works quite well. It's kind of like tricking your mind into believing that I'm getting a lot of things done, which honestly you are. And that kind of leads to the next part of, because you're crossing these things off, you're not beating yourself over, I'm not finishing this project in a reasonable amount of time. And then the last part about this game is actually building a little island, building a little community. And to me, that has some sort of association to me connecting with my friends. And I feel like that's perhaps one of a really big part of being isolated at home. There are many ways to still connect with people when you are at home, whether it's through webinars like this, whether it's through Discord, whether it's through Skype call or Zoom or whatever system that you have to still keep in touch with people. I mean, this is really a perfect time because everybody is stuck at home. Everybody has time, and except for perhaps those who have already been working from home all this time. There is a service that I use with my community called Cast. It's K-A-S-T. So Cast allows you to stream any browser, and we use that to host movie days. I would like put a movie on Netflix, and then I would cast it to my community, so everyone from around the world, if they have access to that room, you get like a link to send it to your friends, so you can actually watch a movie together if you want to, and or do any kind of other stuff like play Jackbox game. And that kind of ties in with scheduling and entertainment for yourself every day, because when you're working from home, one of the biggest problem is that a lot of people feel like they're not getting enough done. So they keep on wanting to work. They work late into the night, they feel really burnt out, or they feel so anxious about getting work done that they're not getting any work done. And instead of scheduling work for yourself, I would say prioritize scheduling entertainment for yourself. Schedule a cutoff time, schedule an event with your friend, even if it's something simple like, okay, we're gonna watch this movie on cast at 8 p.m. And because you have that timeline in your head, you would kind of force yourself, how do you say it? Like you're subconsciously force yourself to finish everything that you had to finish before that time. And then once that time hits, it's like kind of giving yourself something to look forward to. And I realized that's what Animal Crossing has been doing for me. Because like the shop closes. The shop in that game closes at 10 p.m. every day. And so that I want to do certain things before the shop closes, and therefore I'll schedule like just a tiny bit of time in the game. And therefore I have that idea in my head of, I'm like, okay, so 8 o'clock, I have to go and catch some bugs and fish to sell in the store so I can make it on time. And therefore, prior to that time, I have to finish this and this and this and this so that I can play. So in my opinion, I feel like scheduling entertainment is just as important as scheduling work. Um, and oh, do we actually, just the last bit before we start, I'm gonna bring in Joanna to help me very quickly, but the last point I want to make is also if you're working as an artist from home, I know a lot of artists right now, they really need support because all of our conventions are gone, and I know that's a huge portion of our income source. That being said, this is a very weird time, and that is the reality of things. I know that, and quite frankly, the type of art that we can do from home is luxury, right? Like it's not going to be at the priority of a lot of people's spending budget right now because many people are out of work and many people simply don't have that in their mindset right now to support other artists. So even though it is very important still to provide commission information because you never know, right? Or to provide ways to support you as an artist, but more importantly is to set your expectation low, far lower than usual. Know that this is a time where it's not just us struggling, the entire world is struggling. And so instead of focusing on the part that we cannot change, focus on the part that it's actually tangible. This is the perfect time to hone your craft, to learn proper skills that will aid your art, because art isn't just about painting and drawing, it's also about content creation. It's also about, unfortunately, social medias. I really hate. I really want to get into that, but we don't really have time for that today. But part of that is getting accustomed to posting on social medias. Maybe practice recording your art, practice video editing, practice building a channel, a YouTube channel, a streaming channel, Instagram stories, or IGTV, or whatever have you, right? Because the one thing that will not betray you in art is your skill. And this is a good time to kind of focus on doing that. If you feel like nothing else really is working, even, and you're not building these content for the likes or the retweets or the reshare. You are doing this content to prepare for when the pandemic is over, for when the world somewhat goes back to the way it was. I don't believe it's going to go back to the way it was, but it's certainly going to have a lot of changes for better and for worse. But this is in preparation for the future, because as an artist, you just keep growing. You don't stop because of pandemic. So that's the things that I kind of wanted to talk about before we jump into answering your questions. And I will bring in Joanna now to help me with delivering some of the questions you may have, or some of the concerns you would like to address.
Okay, we've got some good questions too.
Oh, really? Awesome. I'm glad.
So for one, the first one's from me though, because I always wanted to ask and I never got around to it. Why the one with bear?
Oh, so sorry. Be right back. All right. Pardon me. I should have prepared this. For some reason, I had a feeling that somebody would ask this. But this is my bear. If you guys have not seen him, he's very beaten up. I've had this bear since I was 1 year old. My grandma, I lived in Taiwan, but my grandma gave it to me. She found it in the night market, and yeah, he has been with me for, God, how old am I? 32. He has been with me for 31 years, and he's so scratched up. This is the proof of my anxiety, by the way. Like when I get anxious, I kind of scratch in there. That's why. So his name is Bear. That's why a lot of the people, I know, very creative, but a lot of people were saying, how come it's not the one with the bear, a bear, or bears? Like there's grammar problem, but I'm like, that's his name. That's him.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the early questions was, because everyone's looking at your surroundings, what's the tablet next to you?
The tablet next to me is the Wacom One. So I am in love with this thing. I've been doing a series of Clip Studio Paint tutorials actually for Wacom, and I have been doing all of my tutorials on this tablet, and all of the drawings, paintings, and video editing, I've been doing it on here. So this is their newest, most affordable tablet that they have on their in their line. So, but this is actually not a standalone tablet. This has to be hooked up to your PC. It's just that right now my cord is off because I have to turn the screen on. But you have to connect this to a PC. It's honestly a really amazing tablet. If you guys want to see reviews or unboxing, I promise it's like a very honest one. But if you guys want to see the review, they're on my Instagram actually, in the highlighted story. Yes.
Yeah, we can probably share the link too if I find it. I think a lot of people that work from home now for the first time, or in general, or starting out, they're struggling to not get distracted while being home.
Yeah.
What can you do?
So that is definitely one of the biggest things, and something that I feel like I don't even really do that great of a job keeping away my distractions. But one of the core things is, especially if you're like me, I work and also sleep, and all of my entertainment, they're all in the same room. So for me, it's more about identifying what exactly is distracting you. Like if it's your phone, like honestly turn your phone off and put it somewhere else. Like, because when you don't have easy access to it, you will feel less distracted by it. It is a good thing to kind of say, okay, this particular monitor is only for working only, and you don't browse the internet, you don't look up social medias, you don't read the news in that particular environment. And honestly, this is something that it will take time to build. If you haven't been doing it in less than a month, that's okay. Because it's something I feel like I've been doing it for like 4.5 years and I still don't have it perfected. So so it's identifying your distractions is a start. Knowing what is keeping you away from your work, and like I said, actually rewarding yourself with a break, or actually rewarding yourself with some entertainment schedule later on the day actually helps far more with you not wanting to be distracted. So instead of trying to like fight all of the surrounding, because in my case, sometimes it's just really hard because I can't turn off my internet because my work requires the internet. So it's more about, okay, if I have to take a break now, set an alarm for that. Then I have to force myself to finish everything. And then when I have that deadline, when I have that fear of, okay, I have to get this done, I just subconsciously not allow myself to get distracted. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you listen to music while you work?
Oh, I listen to all kinds of things. It really depends. That is one of the things that I mentioned in the 5 tips to work from home for Wacom. So you need some sort of stimulation when you're working. I sometimes am in the mood for really chill music. I sometimes am in the mood for metal. It really depends on what I'm doing. Recently, I have been watching a lot of D&D. I don't know if my audience has heard of Critical Role. I have like all the figurines there, but Critical Role is a D&D campaign. So they're featuring a lot of famous voice actor, and because they tell the story through their voices, and the kind of world that they create is so fascinating to me. So when I'm working on my stuff, I sometimes just kind of listen to them and feel inspired, and I kind of put that into my work. So yeah, I listen to all kinds of things, and the important thing is to find a thing that will stimulate you, but also just not exciting enough that it's going to distract you or make you even more anxious.
Yeah. Okay. So I know like we've talked about this, but how do you keep motivated to do art specifically?
So art for me is not a distraction. Sorry, it's not about motivation. It's more about discipline. Because I do this for a living. If I don't do art, I don't have money. Right? So if I don't do art, I don't have an income, and that's just a huge reality check sometimes. I know that for hobbyists, it can be very difficult to maintain that discipline. In those cases, I recommend you to always remember that drawing is for fun. Like, you don't have to keep yourself motivated when you're doing something fun. Like, do I have to be motivated to play Animal Crossing? No. Right? However, if you do this for a living, and sometimes it's just very hard to motivate yourself, or sometimes you just don't have that creative, like your creative energy is completely gone. And I actually go through that a lot. But this is part of the reason why I keep on altering between medias. I do digital art, I do traditional art. With digital art, I do line art, I do painting, I do all kinds of things. And one of the reasons why I do that is because I know learning new things excite me. So for you to maintain your motivation is remember what excites you. If you have a hard time finishing this painting, you no longer feel excited about this painting, you won't find motivation back to work on that painting. And therefore you have to think about something else that might excite you. And sometimes that's not art, sometimes that's movies, sometimes that's video games. Do that and then try to find inspiration from there. Or another more another thing that relies less on your emotional state is a practice. So a small scale practice. You don't really need a huge type of motivation to do stuff like a tiny little sketch or something that you can probably reference off a photo. Like don't try to be innovative or creative with that, but instead just try to do something mundane, something small. And through completing those little tasks, such as sketching from a photo or doing a photo study, it'll make you feel more satisfied, and then that satisfaction is going to fuel your motivation next. So, so I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah. So a lot of artists that are very active on social media, they talk about how creating something just to create is giving them a bit of anxiety because they have nothing to post. How do you deal with that?
Oh, this is a really good question. I don't do that. See, I have a lot of, if I go into social media in general, this is going to be a 2-hour session. But I am going to be very honest right now, is a lot, I have gotten a lot of feedbacks on my social media numbers. A lot of people have asked me before, why do you only have a certain amount of followers? How come, like, how come no one knows about you? And my answer to that is because I don't really feel like I do social media the right way, but it's absolutely right for me. So if for those who feel like you're not creating the right type of content for social medias, as hard as it can be, and as hard as generic as it may sound, I would tell you to not worry about that, because for my case, it also was a very huge struggle at first. I don't really do popular fan art. I don't ride a trend. And I have actually been doing everything that is against growing an audience on Twitch. And I make those choices consciously because I know that they were making me depressed. Like they were hurting me far more than they were helping me. And one of the things that I have learned about art is that you have to be happy with what you're doing. You have to enjoy the process of creating art. If you focus on too much on providing content that you feel like an audience wants to see, you're not going to be happy. But when you are happy, when you're passionate about something that you're creating, that passion will infect people far more than just drawing something that's trending. Not to say that drawing something trending is wrong by any means. It certainly works for a lot of people. But at the same time, if it doesn't work for you and you feel like you're losing motivation to do what others are doing, then that path is not for you. And also in general, I feel like I am able to do the things that I do now is because I followed who I am. I learn about myself more than learn about how to play the games or how to, grow your social media following. And I think that's one of the things that I encourage you to do if you ever worry about social media. First of all, understand yourself as a company, right? Because if you want to be a good employee to any company, you have to first understand their products. You have to understand the history of that company. So if you're working for yourself, then you have to understand this company. You have to understand yourself and what works for you. Once you have done that, then things will kind of start falling into place. If you're not that person who can comfortably ride the trend, you will just keep struggling and you will keep hating the fact that how come it's just not growing? How come it's not growing the way that I wanted it to be? And at the same time, I'm not having fun with what I'm doing. And it's really a lose-lose situation. So yeah.
Yeah. So just going back to working from home and you as an artist who works from home a lot, what's your schedule right now? Has it changed at all? Or do you just keep doing what you've been doing?
In a general scale of things, it hasn't really changed. That being, I actually ended up being busier than I was before. That being said, at the beginning of this year, or the beginning of March, actually, when things started to get canceled, I obviously had to readjust my schedules entirely, because all the shows that I was supposed to be attending were gone. So in terms of my scheduling, that was one of the biggest change, was trade shows or conventions being canceled. I was really looking forward to GDC, but unfortunately, that was one of the first ones to go. In hindsight, they made the right decision. But during that time, I was definitely really down for a few days, more down than I was expecting myself to be. But then once I kind of accepted the reality of, okay, that's gone, like I don't have to worry about that now, my schedule shifted back to the projects I can complete from home. And like I said, your art skill is the only thing that will not betray you. So I shifted back to the projects that I was working on before I got distracted by conventions or trade shows, finishing some of the paintings that I always wanted to do. In terms of my daily schedule, it hasn't changed at all. I still wake up whenever I want. I still go to bed whenever I want. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned dividing bigger projects into smaller sections so that they're easier to accomplish. And there was one question about feeling inadequate in what you achieve when doing these smaller projects instead. Do you have those kinds of problems?
Feeling inadequate.
Like not achieving enough in one session, for
in
example.
one session? Okay,
Yeah.
so that kind of goes back to lowering your expectations for yourself. Like I perfectly understand not feeling accomplished or not feeling adequate. Because I actually, one of the biggest things, and Joanna, you and I discussed this before, that I struggle constantly with is imposter syndrome. I always feel inadequate. That being said, this is why I like this the visual cue of listing the small task and then crossing things off. Because when you see it, something being crossed off, it doesn't matter what it is that you crossed off. You just know that I completed something. And that kind of fills a tiny bit of that inadequate feeling. It's less about knowing mentally that, oh, I didn't actually finish a project. I'm just completing a small mundane task. But it's more on the visual sense, tricking your mind into thinking, okay, I finished a lot of things. That being said, I really do understand the feeling. Sometimes it's hard to trick your mind to believe that you are completing something significant. But that kind of leads back to me saying you have to lower expectation for yourself. Be forgiving of yourself right now, because this is honestly possibly one of the biggest struggle that a lot of people are facing right now. It's a world crisis, right? It's not a normal thing to be going through. If you feel inexperienced, if you feel inadequate, that's okay. Because you probably have not gone through this before. Nobody has gone through a pandemic. So just know that even the smallest thing that you're completing by day, even just waking up, even just making your bed, making coffee, that in itself honestly is an accomplishment. And I hope you feel that. Oh, man, I really feel you. I'm trying not to get emotional, but I really do hear you, and I hope you can acknowledge how much that is. Like, even just completing the smallest thing. Yeah.
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 Continuing with that, like there was a question, for you or in general, is it okay to take a whole day off when you should be working?
Yes. Yes. Okay, so for me, I'm a very emotional type of worker, and I have to say, even when I'm giving advice to you right now, it does not necessarily mean that I always succeed in achieving it, right? Because it is something that I strive to practice myself, and I know what's good for me, and therefore I'm passing this advice to you. But I know very well that it's very difficult to accomplish. Sometimes I know that I should be working, but I just can't. Like, there are days where I just can't. Actually, very recently, it just happened. I think last Monday, I was supposed to record video. I knew that I had to record video. I knew that I had a Thursday or Wednesday deadline to catch, but I was so down that day that I really couldn't do anything. Like, and I spent most of the day in bed. But to me, that is important too, because especially if you're an artist, art is an emotional, right? Like, content creating is emotional. And if your emotional state just isn't there, people will be able to tell if you force it. So if you do have a tight deadline, try and maybe ask to postpone it. I think right now a lot of people can understand, because everybody is going through trouble, and it's okay to take a time to be down and just kind of collect yourself back up together. It is as important as getting work done, because you can't work at your 100% if your mental state is in that place where you just can't work, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. We do get a lot of questions for tips in starting out with digital art. Is now a good time? Is now a good time to start with digital art?
Absolutely. This is the time. This is the time, guys. Get those tablets out. Boot out Clip Studio Paint. Start doing that. But that's like half joke, right? This is the time to pick up a new hobby, or to really do anything that will excite you. This is the perfect time to do it. And honestly, digital art is really an important asset in terms of how little resource that it actually takes. So I do digital, I do traditional, oh, I actually have this thing right now. I'm working on this thing. So this is the resin, and oh, you can't really see it, it's not focusing, but anyway, so traditional art for me, because it has a really steep stopping point, you know that when the paper just can't take it anymore. Well, you know, you just cannot build more paint on top of what you already put down. So it forces you to stop, whereas digital is endless. You can keep Control Z, you can keep changing the colors, and you can change everything in an instant. Digital art is perfect for experimenting. It is perfect for perfecting your fundamentals, because it takes very little resource for you to do like thousands of different figure sketches, right? Whereas like in the sketchbook, even though it's really great, but like right now, right now, if you order a sketchbook, you can't go outside to buy a sketchbook, first of all. If you order a sketchbook, it'll probably take like 2 weeks to arrive or something like that. So yeah, so right now, if you have access to digital art, it's the perfect place for you to practice.
So a lot of events have been canceled, and we talked about this, that this year was supposed to be really busy for you with conventions, and then that happened.
Yeah.
And do you have any advice for people who need to find other income sources while being artists, like specific platforms or things they could do to still earn a living from being an artist?
This is a tough question. I think my position is, I don't want to say it a little unique, because that sounds really self-absorbed. But prior to conventions, I actually spent many years. So I only have been doing conventions for a year. This is the second year, going into the second year of doing conventions. But outside of doing conventions, I was already building a Twitch community. I have a lot of supporters there, and I know a lot of you guys are in the audience. Thank you. I love you. But that income from Twitch is able to help me a little bit. There is also Patreon. There is Gumroad, where you can provide tutorials. But at the same time, I hesitant to raise your expectations in that sense, because right now, like I said, many of the people who are able to afford art may no longer be able to afford art. They would probably still love to support you, but they just cannot. So in terms of income sources, Twitch could be a good place, because when you're streaming, when you are providing people of entertainment, or lifting their mood up, they may be more inclined to support you financially as well. But at the same time, a lot of my income does come from commissions. And right now, I have a huge list of commissions that I couldn't complete last year because I was constantly traveling. So right now, that's what I'm focusing on, is getting these commissions out of the way. That being said, it is something that I have built up prior to this pandemic, and so I hesitate to kind of provide feedback in that sense, simply because I don't think it's realistic to have that expectations right now for everyone to be able to afford it. That being said, it is still worth a try. Like I said, it's still worth to put your commissions info out there on social medias. It is good to practice doing video editing and do YouTube and see if YouTube can become somewhat of a financial source. But if you're really looking for a quick way to make money, I have to say there is none. No,
there never
yeah,
is.
yeah, there is no way to be able to kind of immediately shift that income source within a month, right? But the channels are there, Patreon, and Gumroad, Twitch, but these things all take time to build. So be patient. I understand that right now a lot of people are in panic, but it is unfortunately the inevitable right now. So be patient and just try to lower your expectations so you don't feel disappointed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we're very close to the end now.
Yeah, we are. I can't believe I talked for like half an hour.
So one very philosophical question at the end.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
With everyone having to stay at home, how important do you think is art? How important is it for you?
How important is this for me that everybody is staying home?
And consuming more art, more entertainment.
Well, if I'm completely being honest, I would rather this not be the case. I want people to be happy, and I feel like right now a lot of people are struggling, and that's hard on me too. I even though it is absolutely true that right now people are just, they're soaking up so much online content, and which is why I kind of put a stress on you building that social media or practicing to build that social media presence, or at least practicing skill to kind of cope with that, because right now everybody is online. They're forced to stay online. So people are looking at it more. People are wanting more content, wanting more stimulation. In that sense, it is good for us. It is actually really good for us, even though right now we may not be expecting financial support from them, but at least we have their attention, we have their eyes. So that I'm very happy about. That being said, I really do want. I really wish this wasn't the case. If anything, I felt I didn't want this to be like everybody's last resort, right? I wanted people to still be able to go out and enjoy their day, instead of being forced to stay at home and listen to some internet stranger telling you how to work from home. So, but yeah, I do absolutely appreciate the attention. I appreciate you guys giving me the time of your day to consume whatever content that I'm putting out there, whether or not it helps a little bit, but at least hopefully it helped you to distract from whatever that was on your mind before, and just have a little bit of chill time where you can have tea and hang out with me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're in time to finish off.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanna say?
I want to say that well, I am extremely grateful that you guys are here today and that you guys are doing your best to stay in. And I know many of you are struggling. If you weren't struggling or didn't know how to deal with all this, you probably wouldn't be here. So I just want to say that I absolutely can sympathize, and I want you to know that you're not alone in this. And if you ever have any more questions for me, please do feel free to message me on Instagram or email me. I actually do try my best to answer everything, even though sometimes it may take a little bit of time, just because I do constantly get quite a lot of messages. But if you have questions that we don't get to answer today, please feel free to send me a message or come to my live stream. I stream Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. I would be absolutely willing to help. And I know I have a community of good friends, and I know that people are really willing to help as well. So yeah, just a few things before I go. Even if it's not my stream, I will not be offended, but Twitch is a really great way for you to kind of find good companies, to find communities. It's a place for you to socialize without physically socializing. And also getting to meet new people. It's honestly a really great platform. There are many artists that stream on there, amazing artists. There are a lot of great entertainers. And also another thing is that service that I was talking about, Cast, K-A-S-T, that you can use to watch movies with others. So if those could be of help to you, just feel free to use those resources. But yeah, I think my closing is just that I think you're doing the best you can, and I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you very much.
No, thank you, Joanna. Thank you so much for staying up so early.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Sarah Jean. Thank you, Joanna. It's been a great webinar. It's kind of different for what we usually do, but we are so glad that some of your questions get answered. And we will definitely send all of the questions that were not answered to Sarah Jean. So also, we would like to remind you that we had the Wacom One discount offer, $50 off. If you guys were thinking about buying one, use Sarah Jean's rules code. It will be lasting until 2018. Why not trying a Wacom One? And we will share it on our social media. Also, some of you asked about more webinars. Actually, we have a new webinar coming next week with manga. It's about how to draw manga action poses on Clip Studio Paint. So guys, stay connected, stay tuned with our social media. So for more information about Clip Studio Paint, visit our website, Clip Studio Paint, clipstudio.net/n and graphicsly.com. This webinar will be uploaded to our Clip Studio Paint YouTube channel called Celsius Web, and also to our Graphicsly YouTube account. And for those of you who would like to know more information about Sarah Jean, see her art, follow her on Twitch, follow TheOneWithBear on Instagram, Twitch, to see more of her art on ArtStation, and also on Twitter as TheOneWithBear. So with that, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
the
you,
people who are still with
guys.
us. Thank you, John. Thank you so much, Sarah Jean, and see you on our next webinar. Keep in touch and stay tuned with us. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.